I can't think of anyone better to help us reimagine how public policy can build a better world than our special guest today. Van Jones is a 3-time New York Times best-selling author and the host of 2 shows on CNN. He's the host of The Van Jones Show and The Redemption Project. He's also the host of CNN's Incarceration Inc. podcast series. In 2013-2014, Van was the co-host of CNN Crossfire along with Newt Gingrich. He later hosted The Messy Truth, which is a CNN special event series. And he's the co-founder of Magic Labs Media, which is a producer of the award-winning Messy Truth digital series. Van's life mission is to close prison doors and to open doors of opportunity. He's been a leader in the fight for criminal justice reform for more than 25 years. To achieve his goals in this area, he co-founded a series of social enterprises, including the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights, colorofchange.org, greenforall.org, Rebuild the Dream, and the Dream Corps. Today, Van is the CEO of the Reform Alliance, an initiative founded by Jay-Z, Meek Mill, and 6 billionaires to transform the criminal justice system. In 2018, Van and Cut 50 led the winning campaign to pass the First Step Act, a bipartisan federal bill that the New York Times called the most substantial breakthrough in criminal justice in a generation. And that wasn't his first history-making legislative victory. A decade earlier, Van was the primary champion of the Green Jobs Act of 2007. And then in 2009, he worked as the Green Jobs Advisor for the Obama White House. Van has won numerous awards, including the World Economic Forum's Young Global Leader designation, Rolling Stone's 2012 12 Leaders Who Get Things Done designation, Time's 2009 100 Most Influential People in the World, and the 2010 NAACP Image Award. He's also the recipient of the 2017 Webby Special Achievement Award. Born in Jackson, Tennessee, Van Jones lives in New York City and Los Angeles. He's a proud father with 2 sons. He's a 1990 graduate of the University of Tennessee at Martin, where he earned his BS degree in communication and political science. And in 1993, Van earned his law degree from Yale Law School. So please join me in welcoming our very special keynote speaker and world-class change maker, Van Jones.
Well, I'm honored to be here. I appreciate the opportunity. It's crazy to hear that long list and to think about where I was, to me, a short time ago when I was a college student. I think the big takeaway from my life is no matter how smart you are, no matter how many degrees you have, no matter how many presidents you've worked for, no matter how many bestsellers you've got, no matter what you have done, ordinary people at the grassroots level are always 10 times smarter than you are. And my career is a testament to that. I was born in 1968. I'll be 53 years old this year. I was born the year that they killed Dr. King. I was born the year they killed Bobby Kennedy. They beat up a bunch of students who were at the Democratic National Convention trying to fight for peace in Vietnam. They were trying to wipe out hope in the year I was born in 68. And I just basically spent most of my life trying to get the hope back. When you're in kindergarten and Dr. King's only been dead for a couple of years, handful of years, all the adults around you are still mourning. They're still grieving. They're still trying to make sense of the world. And as a child, you're affected by that. And so I was affected by the 60s, even though I was just a little tiny baby in the 60s. It makes sense because my father was actually in Memphis, Tennessee when Dr. King was killed. My dad was born in 1944 in segregation and in poverty. A lot of people, in the new generation say, why do you guys keep talking about race and racism? Get over it, move on. I'm a 9th generation American. I am the first person in my family that was born with all my rights recognized by the government. Think about that, 9th generation American. My mother and my father were born in segregation. My mother and my father, were forced to ride in the back of the bus. This is not ancient history. I didn't say my great grandmother. I said my mama, my daddy. So this is very, very fresh this attempt to have a multiracial, multi-ethnic democracy, democratic republic where everybody counts and everybody matters. It's very new, just in my lifetime. And that's why it's been so hard. But my father was born in 1944 in segregation and in poverty in Memphis, Tennessee. Willie Jones. He joined the military to get out of poverty. Most people were running out of the military in the 60s because of Vietnam. My dad ran into the military. And then when he got out, he put himself through college, went to a little small Black college called Lane College. And he married the college president's daughter. He's coming right out the hood, right out the military, marries the college president's daughter, my mother. And because my dad had it like that, no dummy. And then proceeded, they worked together to get his brother, my Uncle Milton, through college, a cousin through college. Basically, everybody who got out of poverty in my family got out of poverty on this bridge called my father's back. And when I graduated from Yale Law School, the photograph that they put in the funeral program was my father standing in front of Yale Law School with his hands in the air. And he said, look, you're a ninth generation American. The first time anybody in our family was born without a boot on their back directly, you wind up at Yale Law School and graduating from there with the rich folks' kids. So I felt like with all my father had done as a cop in the military and then as an educator, that I wanted to do something just as great, but my starting point was so much better. Both my parents had gone to college, and I was in a position where I felt like, how can I let my parents outdo me in terms of doing good? So I was 24 years old, took my Yale law degree, and I didn't go to Wall Street. I didn't go to a big New York firm. I moved to Oakland, California, and I started suing police officers and police departments that were mistreating African Americans and Latinos and poor folk overall. And I started something 25 years ago this month called the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights. And the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights was literally just a little closet in the back of an established civil rights organization, the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. A woman there, a Black woman named Eva Patterson, who is kind of a local legend in civil rights. She gave me literally when I say a closet, I mean literally a closet. We took the shelves out. This is how we got started. I raised a little bit of fellowship money, $10,000, $15,000. And I got a sponsoring organization, the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, and Eva Patterson to give me a closet in the back of her office. And we took the shelves out of the closet. We moved the tile, the ceiling tile, through an extension cord over the wall because there's no plugs, obviously, in a closet. Plugged the extension cord into a socket in the office next door and squeezed a desk and a Macintosh SE30 into that little closet. And that was my office for almost 3 years. And she had an office. Her office was a cubicle that the interns for the organization used. And we built an organization, the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights, that ultimately went on to reform the San Francisco Police Department, got one of the worst police officers in the history of California fired, a guy named Mark Andaya, who was a brute and a savage who had killed 2 unarmed African-American men and gotten away with it until we got a hold of him. We closed 5 abusive youth prisons in California, and I burned out. The thing about it is, and I got to be honest with you, change is hard. It is very difficult, especially when you're young. You got no money. Nobody knows who you are. You can't just call the mayor. I mean, now look, I've been on TV. I've worked for the president, so I can call a governor. I can call a senator. I can get my phone call returned. That's 25 years ago. Later, 25 years ago, I was just a nobody kid with dreadlocks and a law degree, upset about police brutality and youth violence in an urban community that was suffering, that I wasn't even from. So how do you go about getting any type of influence? how do you go about getting any type of leverage to make a difference if you want to be a grassroots change maker? Now, look, you can go make $1 billion and then give all your money away. That's a different strategy. You can, create the best app in the history of the world, and then, that app maybe saves the planet. That's a different strategy. I'm not smart enough to do that. I wanted to be a change maker in the tradition of Dr. King and Ella Jo Baker and Fannie Lou Hamer and Bayard Rustin and all those people. And so what I discovered was we is stronger than me. We is smarter than me. And, we can win when me would lose. Couple quick stories. I told you we got this terrible police officer fired. How do we do it? It's hard to get a police officer fired, even today. And this is back in the 90s. All these young people say, oh, Van Jones, you're not woke enough. I said, look, I was woke before y'all had alarm clocks. I've been doing this. A lot of people nowadays, they go on social media and they talk about, we got to do something about mass incarceration. Ask them how many prisons they've closed, how many cops they've gotten fired, how many police departments they've reformed, what have they achieved besides just being the wokest person on their Twitter feed? Rhetoric is one thing, results are another. How do you get real results? When you're young and broke and, have a very different vision of how life should be than the mainstream. Well, you have to rely on ordinary people. You have to rely on the people who are in harm's way. You have to rely on their passion and their pain and their witness. And so, look, we had a terrible police officer. We also had a Black mayor of San Francisco at that time, Willie Brown, who he owed a lot to the San Francisco Police Officers Union. The cops union had helped him get in office. He wasn't in a big hurry to go after even a terrible cop, even though he's a quote unquote liberal Black mayor. So here I am, I got to go up against a liberal Black legend. And he's got the Black preachers in his, on his side. He's got the cops on his side. He's got downtown business on his side. He's a tough guy to beat. And he's decided he's not going to fire this cop. And I decided he is going to fire this cop. So what do we do? Well, my law degree didn't mean a lot at that point. I mean, it would have taken me 10 years, to get through a lawsuit. So we decided we were going to focus on his police commission and get them to fire this cop. Well, how do you do that? They owe their allegiance to the mayor. They don't know you from Adam's house cat. We had to go into the community. We had to find those young people standing on street corners, those young people who were in public schools, who were in certain youth programs. And we had to talk to them, and they knew this officer, and they knew how bad he was, and they knew how terrible he had been. And we found young professionals, young teachers, only been teaching for a couple of years. They still were idealistic. People running little not-for-profit, youth centers, still very idealistic. And we got them on our side. And we started taking young people down to City Hall, the Hall of Justice, and getting them to speak out during the public comment period. In California, you have the right to public comment in every public meeting. And at first, the young people said they didn't want to go down there because most people go to 850 Bryant, the Hall of Justice. They're going there to be fingerprinted and put in jail. And they said, what the heck are you guys doing trying to get us to go down to the jail? We're trying to stay away from the jail. And we said, oh, it's going to make a difference. We're not going down there. And we said, well, hold on a second. There's public access television that shows every one of these city hall meetings and school board meetings or whatever. If you come down to the police commission meeting with us, you'll be on television. They said, what? And so we would go down there and we would bring the young rappers, the spoken word artists, the young poets, and they would come to testify about this officer and everything that was going on in front of the police commission. And they were being beamed into every house in the Bay Area. And we turned these very stale, very boring, very tired meetings that nobody cared about into indoor rallies for justice led by young people and youth culture. And eventually we won. And it was, I mean, I wound up getting international awards from human rights organizations and everything else, but it wasn't me. It was the young people themselves speaking out. And of course, with my law degree, I knew how to, make sure the right arguments were being made and the right pressure points were being used. Same with when we closed those 5 abusive youth prisons. I went out there with my law degree and my arrogance and, trying to, demand I get entry into these youth jails, which of course, unless you're representing an actual individual person, you have no right to do that. So I'm down there yelling and screaming and threatening to sue and saying I'm going to call press conferences. But I had a younger, even younger than me, female attorney with me. And while I'm yelling and screaming at the warden, she's noticing all of these mostly Black grandmamas who were standing in long lines to get into these facilities. And they had the right to go because they had family members there. So while I'm yelling and doing my macho thing, she's going talking to each one of these Black grandmamas. And when I walk away with my head hanging down, defeated, not having been able to get access, she had the phone numbers, and at that time, the pager numbers of half the women who were going in and out. And it was based on her, not me, and those grandmas who became families for books, not bars, that led the fight. And they had, you don't need Van Jones and a law degree. You had all these women already had the information and knew everything that was going on, the names of all the guards and everything else. You got to rely on ordinary people. And they need, now that doesn't mean you don't bring something to the table. I mean, you need to have your education, you need to be sharp, you need to understand. You bring your part, they bring their part, and you co-author a plan for change. It's not you just do whatever they come up with, because often they've been stuck and trapped and tricked in the system and they don't know what to do. So it's not you come in there and boss everybody around. You come together and you co-author through lots of different twists and turns and attempts, and mostly failures, a plan that can ultimately work. And you learn from that plan. The next fight, you get a little bit better. And then there's a formula to build something in that way. I call it, this is my secret formula, I call it the 3M conversion. 3M, like Mary conversion. Mobilization, media, money. And I'll move on, but so somebody needs to hear this. The reason people can't make change, 95% of the reason, 95% of the time, 95% of the people can't make change is because they're talking about change and they're not doing anything. So mobilization of resources, of energy, just do something. You got a roommate or somebody on one of your social media feeds or somebody you went to high school with who's always talking how they're going to change the world and bring about revolutionary this and radical that and whatever. And they've been saying the same thing since you met them. They want to change education. Great. Good luck with that. Here's what you do. Get 3 kids and start tutoring them. Do some kind of Sunday or Saturday school for some kids in the community. You say, well, that's not going to change everything. What about the federal government? What about, all these different impediments and poverty and all these different things? Just get 5 kids and start for an hour a weekend and just start trying to teach them anything. And take a picture of it. Media, right? Mobilization, do something, do anything. Media, take your own picture. Show that picture to anybody, throw it up on your Facebook page, throw it up on your Instagram page. Say, hey, look, I've got a Saturday school for kids in this neighborhood. I'm trying to raise some money for pizza. Venmo me, cash at me. And see, once you get enough money to pay for the pizza. Well, now you got more pizza and you got some bus fare. Now you can do 10 kids. Okay, you got some money, you can do a bigger mobilization. Now you can maybe call the little local radio station or a podcaster or a YouTube influencer and let them know what you're doing, talk about it. Now you can go raise more money. You can write a little small grant to your school or write a small grant to a community foundation. Now you can start teaching a bunch more kids. Now you can get the front page of the newspaper. Now you can go get a big grant. Now you've got something going. Now, because you're doing something, when you go and talk to the mayor or when you go and say, we want to change, you've done something. You've got mobilization, media, money. Anytime you're having a problem and you can't make progress, are you doing something? Are you getting attention for it? And are you raising money for it? Those are the three skills. And everybody goes, oh, no. First problem is people don't want to do anything. They want to talk all the time and be right and tell you how you're wrong. You know, with woker than thou. And you know what I'm talking about. These woker than thou people, everything you do, they're going to criticize it's not radical enough, or you didn't use the right language, but they're not doing anything. Ignore them, get something done. Or then too, well, I don't want attention. I'm not doing this for attention. I don't want credit. I just want to help people. I just want to help people. Shut up with that. You're not helping people if you're doing great work in a closet where nobody can find it and nobody can invest in it and nobody can help you out. You bringing attention to good work and good people is helping the cause. People say, Van Jones, I can't stand that Van Jones. He's a shameless self-promoter. Hey, shameless self-promoter, that Van Jones. I say, au contraire, I'm not a shameless self-promoter. I'm a proud self-promoter. Get it correct, because I'm proud of what I'm doing. I'm proud of the laws I've helped to pass. I'm proud of the businesses I've helped to get going. I'm proud of the work that I've done. And I want you to know about it, because you'll have a better day if you know that somebody out here is doing good work. And maybe also you can get involved. You have to tell people what you're doing. Now, you can tell some people are only doing it for the credit. Well, that's so obnoxious, and that takes care of itself. But the good, truly good people need to get out of this thing of, I don't want any attention, I'm just doing it to help people. You're not helping people if nobody knows. Number 3, money. I'm not a money motivated person, but I've learned over my 25 years of doing this work that money matters a lot. And if you don't have a lot of money yourself, you got two problems. Either you got to go earn it yourself, which is perfectly fine. And then maybe you become a philanthropist, or you got to go find people who have the money and get them to give it to you. Either government, money, which is hard to get, or philanthropists or foundations. Or you can, crowdsource your own money, through your own connections. But money matters. And even if you're not money, and for people who are not money motivated, learning how to raise money, learning all of the business side of social change becomes something that's very, very important. So I say all that to you to say that I did all that work and it was hard. And we had some victories, but we also had a lot of defeats. I always brag on the prisons that we closed, but most of them were still open. I brag on the cops that got fired, but most of them were still on the force. And over time, I burned out. It was too hard. I went to too many funerals, too many community meetings that went bad, because when you're dealing with poor folk and marginalized people and mistreated people and traumatized people, sometimes we fight among each other worse than anything that could happen to us. So this coalition falls apart. This group falls out with that group. There's a whole bunch of drama with no plot. And I burned out. And it was me trying to get healthy, me trying to get my own health. I stopped trying to save the world for a minute. I started trying to save Van Jones. Started going to meditation retreats. I got into therapy, got, coaching. I started studying Buddhism and Hinduism and getting deeper in my Christian faith, and trying to eat better. I got a gym membership. And in that phase where I kind of walked away from some of the work, I met a whole bunch of other people who were not day-to-day fighting against the system every day and mad and whatever, which I'm proud that I was. I've never apologized for being on the left side of Pluto as I was. I did some of my best work in those years, but I burned out. I couldn't sustain it. And I met a bunch of other people who were in the business community, running solar companies, running organic food companies, running all these positive businesses that, and I said, hey, how come you guys have all this great stuff in the white community, but we don't have any of that stuff in Oakland? So I came up with the idea of something called the Oakland Green Jobs Corps, to take some of the young people that we've been getting out of jail and getting them jobs, putting up solar panels, getting them jobs working in organic agriculture, getting them jobs in the so-called green industries, thereby fighting poverty and pollution at the same time. Now, that idea didn't come from me by myself. It came from me taking a break from the hard work, looking after myself and then seeing solutions that were working for me, I wanted them to bring back to the community. So sometimes you have to leave the community to come back to it with something else to offer. That's not selling out. You know, I mean, sometimes you just burn out and you can't do no more. And then you have to come back with something. So I did that. Well, then guess what happens? Now we have this Oakland Green Jobs Corps. We're getting folks, you know, and it was never thousands and thousands of young people, about, you know, a couple dozen young people, but those young people were so amazing. And the pictures, again, media, the pictures of these African-American youth standing on top of roofs, having installed solar panels, and they got their hands in the air and they're excited. Those pictures went viral. And Nancy Pelosi, who had just become Speaker of the House the first time, across the bridge in San Francisco, I'm in Oakland, she found out about what we're doing. What did she do? She said, this is unbelievable. Let me bring you to Washington, D.C., have you testify in front of all my committees in D.C. about your program. Suddenly we get a guy named George W. Bush, who was president at that time. He got excited about what we were doing. And he signed a bill, which they mentioned, called the Green Jobs Act of 2007, to take my little program and spread it all across the country through the Department of Labor. Next year, I wrote a book about that. The book became a bestseller. It's in 6 languages, and been used in 100 US universities last year alone. Coined a phrase called the Green New Deal in that book, by the way. Again, I was woke before y'all had alarm clocks. And a guy named Barack Obama read the book. Suddenly, I'm in the White House as a special advisor, trying to turn that little program that we had in Oakland into an $80 billion, billion with a B, dollar federal initiative to bring solar and wind and all kind of stuff. And I could go on and on. My only point is that we always is going to be stronger and smarter and better than me. So much of what you're going to be learning is how you can be smarter and better. And you have to do that. You have to be excellent. You have to kill the grades. You've got to have the extracurriculars. All that sort of stuff is good so that you can go out and be a better part of a we. It's false. It's a mythology. It's just, you know, you against the world and you're a great thing and I this and me, myself and I. There's a part of it that's that. But the bigger part of it is, who is your network? Who can you work with? Who are you in dialogue with? Who's informing you? Who's showing you where you have blind spots and don't understand things? How do you work with other people's genius to solve problems and have that be your genius, is working with other people's genius? Those are the people who are going to win, I think, the most in this new century that we're in. But in closing, I'll just say this. Now, I really want to get to your questions because, you know, you guys are totally different generation than mine. But some of this stuff is true yesterday, today, and tomorrow. You can make a tremendous difference with your time and with your talent, with your gifts, with your blessings. It's just hard. That's all. It's just really brutally hard. But so is everything worth doing. Everything worth doing is brutally hard. Otherwise, you know, everybody would do it and it would be no big deal. You know, it's not, the stuff that's easy to do, nobody has respect for. It doesn't inspire you, doesn't call you. It's that person who runs a marathon in record time. It's that person who, wins a championship or starts a new company or changes a real law or starts a program that helps, lots and lots of people. Those are people you respect and you admire, but it's just brutally hard. But I will tell you, as somebody who comes from the edge of a small town in the middle of nowhere, Tennessee, whose dad grew up in poverty, I'm the first person in my family to ever even set foot on an Ivy League campus, and then took the Ivy League degree the hard way into the tough, parts of Oakland. You can do whatever you want to do. It's just brutally hard. But what the hell are you here for? And why do you have all these advantages and all these opportunities? Some of them are privileges that you didn't earn, but some are hard-earned advantages that your discipline and your sacrifice gave you. Why do you have all of these advantages and all this privilege if you're not going to do anything great? Do something great. And if you can, do something for other people. That's my prayer for your life. And I'm done. I can't hear you.
had to do that at least once in the new year. Thank you so much for those remarks, Van. And we have a question for you from our audience. So as someone who will be graduating from Duke in the spring, how can people my age get involved in criminal justice reform outside of protesting and donating?
Well, that depends. I don't know enough about what you're into, but what I will say is that uh, sometimes you can't go directly into a field. There may not be enough people hiring or whatever. What I would do is start trying to offer value to the field, no matter where you're working. If you want to, you can use your social media to speak out, to commentate, to curate, to support, to cheerlead, and sometimes you get yourself attention in that way. It's tough right now because of COVID. It's hard to just like walk into an office and volunteer. I know that's kind of a little bit tougher, but contact the people who you see doing this work and bug the heck out of them on social media. And when they go to your social media identity, it should look like you're serious about social change. If all your social media is just partying and bullshit, I'm not that impressed. You got to understand, you're moving from, as you leave college and you move into the real world, we don't know who you are. So what we're going to do, we're going to go to your social media and look at you. And if it's all partying and bullshit, I'm going to think this person is young and doesn't have a lot of wisdom or self-respect. If you're using your social media to advance a social cause, that is one thing you can do that advances the likelihood that you're going to be taken seriously.
So on Twitter, there seems to be a lot of your comments about self-care and really sort of taking care of yourself to run this marathon is hitting home with the number of our audience members. And I wonder if you could say a little more about that. I mean, I'm especially thinking about some of your recent comments, especially in the context of these egregious offenses to racial justice. And when you bring a knowledge of these kinds of issues from your personal experience, from the work that you do and the things that you've seen, when people act like they're just so surprised in these moments, I can imagine that has to be exhausting. So how do you take care of yourself and stay in this game?
Well, look, the most important is to be in the fight. In other words, some people would substitute self-care for being in the fight. It's like, well, I'm taking care of myself. That is the fight. That's okay. I mean, if that's your thing, that's your thing. But I'm more interested in talking to people who actually want to be in the fight and then to be able to have longevity in the fight. So the first thing is you got to be in the fight. You got to be trying to help people. You got to be around, and guys, it's not just what you tweet about. I can't tell you how ridiculous it is to me that their activism is just being on Twitter all day. No, people can't eat your sound bites. You know what I mean? You have to actually help real people. And that requires some dedication. But once you're in the fight, it is important that you have your own rituals and that you run the experiments on yourself. What keeps me healthy? What feels good? What foods work for me? What foods don't? What kind of meditation? And you're not going to figure this out in a day or a year or maybe even a decade. You're always trying to learn more about what works for you. I was raised in the Black Christian church. That's still my bedrock. But I've learned a lot from Buddhism and Hinduism. And I've gone a lot of meditation retreats, and I'll be the only little old Negro up in there. You know what I mean? But I've learned a lot, and I bring that wisdom back, and I reinterpret it for myself and for my family and my kids, and even right now, I'm trying to switch to being a vegan for 30 days. I've already fallen off the bandwagon because I didn't know the yogurt wasn't vegan. I was okay, but it looked healthy, but healthy ain't vegan. It's like, okay, I can't have the yogurt. That's messing up my breakfast, but I'm trying to think. So but it's about, you have to love yourself and invest in yourself to have anything to give to other people. And if you find that difficult, it's because of trauma. It's because you're wound driven in this work. You're trauma driven in this work. You're not going to do your best work. Most of us are that way at the beginning. We're coming out of trauma. We're coming out of wounds. We're coming out of feeling oppressed. But you're not going to ultimately do your best work. At some point, you have to go from burning diesel to burning solar. You have to go from being wound driven to being purpose driven, from being ego driven to being soul led. And that's a process.
I'm taking notes. I know we all are. Okay, next question. How do we keep our young people positive and optimistic in the face of so much partisan politics and aggression?
Well, look, first of all, we have to realize that there's a reason that you're upset, and it's not, and some of it's good and some of it's bad. Some of it's legit and some of it's BS. You should legitimately be upset about the amount of just atrocious behavior that's happening, that's taking lives and undermining democracy and all that type of stuff. You know what I'm talking about. We don't have to get into that. But also understand that you have a profit motive on the part of the media to keep you upset, because you have, partisan media. They've learned now that if they can get one side or the other going, they can keep their audience share. So they're always going to have one side mad at the other because they're making money off you being upset. And then you add social media. You think these devices are giving you information. They're not primarily designed, these apps, they're not primarily designed to give you information. They're designed to give you endorphins, those chemicals in your brain that give you certain feelings. And so when I look at my social media feed, they're showing me something totally different than they're showing my conservative friends. Same app, but they learn now to show me only stuff about the Democrats and how bad the Republicans are. And they're showing that same person on that same app who's a conservative, a different person on the same app who's conservative, oh, how the Democrats are terrible and Republicans are great. Because why? They want me to keep staying on that app. They know if I'm a Democrat, they show me stuff about the Republicans, I'm gonna turn that app off. And so their profit motive comes from me being more and more addicted to outrage. You have legitimate reasons to be upset, but you have an illegitimate profit motive that's driving it more than it should be. Because the reality is that most people in this country are good. I'm gonna tell you that. I've been in, left coast, right coast, deep south, richest people in the world, literally, poorest people in the world, literally, Native American reservations, Appalachia, Hollywood, Silicon Valley. Most people are all right. In fact, most people are pretty awesome. The awful people get all the attention, or another way to put it is, when you're being awful, even if you're a good person, you get all the attention. But most people are pretty awesome, or could be if you gave them the opportunity to. So don't believe this is reality, what the media is showing you. Don't believe this is reality, what your phone is showing you. The reality is out here. And the way that you stay positive, get your butt over here and help some of these kids who are really going through stuff and who just you showing up is a blessing to them. I know it's harder in COVID, but just you showing up and trying to tutor somebody in math or art or whatever, that's going to keep you going. Real people helping out, getting involved, and not just being involved to protest, though I love protests. Please keep protesting. But it's just protesting and tweeting, people can't live under your protest signs. You have to be able to. So it's real community. And your generation has been robbed of that because of social media, because of COVID. But trust me, even though I ultimately burned out dealing with community stuff and not taking care of myself, it wasn't just dealing with the community. It was I wasn't taking care of myself. So I'm in these tough communities and stuff like that. At first it was very thrilling, it was very inspiring, whatever. Then I started burning out because I wasn't taking care of myself. But if you can take care of yourself, eat right, meditate, pray, have a therapist, have a counselor, have support groups, have people you talk to. And by the way, if you only talk to people who look just like you, I don't care if you're black, brown, white, male, female, whatever, you're gonna have scurvy. Scurvy is when you don't have enough nutrients, and your bones start bending up, you're gonna have scurvy of the soul. If you are an African-American female on the campus, you need to have one white conservative dude that's one of your best friends. I said it. Why? Because even though you're not going to agree on nothing, you're going to learn more in those conversations and get a bigger worldview in those conversations than anything else. Now, you need to have your homegirls and your homeboys that you can come back to and cuss and fuss. But we too often on these campuses, we glob up in a little group, and then we just wind up 4 years later and you missed half the campus. You missed 90% of the campus because we're like this. Have your home base you come back to, but you got to know those Asian kids. You got to know all these other folks because y'all not going to be on the campus forever. And day after tomorrow, when these people are all across the country, you want to be able to call them, get a job for your cousin, find out what's going on in this industry, start a business with this one, get a contract from that one. Tomorrow always comes. And so if you're taking care of yourself and you have your little in group to huddle up with, you can then go all over the campus with your head held high. That should be the strategy, not just to clump up and push through. You're wasting your time and you're wasting your mama's money doing it that way.
Thank you very much. Next question. How do I motivate my little board for a war orphan boarding school in South Sudan to ask people here to give more, jump in and engage more fully when there's just so much going on in the States?
You just have to make it sexy, figure out how to create the coolest video. People now are very video oriented, very visually oriented, make it human, and also create some challenges. See if you can, get this sorority to compete with that sorority to raise money. And also nobody's going to love your cause as much as you do. So you also have to help other people. If you want people to help your cause, are you helping other people's causes? Because if you're helping other people's causes, they're going to naturally want to help yours. But if you're always on some me, myself, and I stuff, then you have to people, hey, look, good luck. So, that's the politics of it. Make it cool, make it sexy, keep it human, but also make sure that you're helping other people, which will naturally make them want to help you.
So this next question asks about some of the risks of working toward the larger good. So the question is, how do you balance taking risks for the larger good and earning enough to support yourself and a family eventually? Do you see any trade-offs? And how have you navigated this?
Well, I was a lot more risk tolerant when I was in my 20s. Didn't have kids. And I just really believed in these causes. And also, my father had set such an amazing example of somebody who had done so much with so little. And so I wasn't that financially motivated. As long as I had enough money to eat, get my little bus fare, get my little quarters to go down the laundromat, in my 20s, I was good. Here's the amazing thing. I had a lot of people I went to law school with who were very money motivated. I had a lot of people I went to college with who were very money motivated. I'm not trying to brag. I have more money than most of those people now. Not because I was so focused on the money, because I was so focused on my cause. I had to meet people with money. I was so focused on my cause. I had so many people who wanted to be friends with celebrities. I wound up working with Prince, Lauryn Hill, Kim Kardashian, Jay-Z, Meek Mill, Common. You go down the list, Diddy, Snoop, Pharrell, all these people. Oh, I just want to be in Hollywood. I never cared about any of that stuff. But I was fighting my causes. And in order for me to win, I had to bring in those big celebrity voices. So I know more celebrities than the fame-oriented people. I have more money than the money-oriented people because I did such good work. And I met so many people doing that work that when the time came, I wanted to get a book deal. I got a great book deal. Time came for me, I wanted to get a TV deal. I got a great TV deal. Time came and So I wind up doing better financially from a fame point of view, from an access point of view, than the people who that's what they were focused on. I'm not saying it happens for everybody. I'm an exception in that regard. But what I will say is, in your 20s, do what you believe in. Do what you feel called to do. And it's going to be hard, and you're not going to get no money maybe for a while. Conceivably, now you might come up with a great app, but there are other ways to do it. I'm telling you how I did it. If you figure out a way to be rich and do it, God bless you, and then give me some money. But if you can't, there is a period a lot of people go through in their 20s where they go overseas and they're in the Peace Corps, they do all this sort of stuff. And those become foundational experiences for them later on, because now they're different than just everybody else who's grabbing for dollars. They've done something. They've seen the world from a different point of view. They've had heartbreak. They've had struggle. You know, they understand the world, and they're much more valuable, ironically, later on than the people who just did the straight and narrow. So, you know, I'm not your financial advisor, so, you know, you do what you want to do. But I can just tell you that for myself, had I tried to go for money, I'd probably be broke. I was willing to be broke, and now, you know, I got a few pennies.
So the next question comes from a student who says, thanks so much for being here today. On the topic of books, what are some recommendations either from the bookshelf behind you or some of your favorites overall?
You know, I read a lot. I actually audiobook a lot now, because I read too slow and this information goes too fast. I've got to the point now where I can audiobook and listen at 3x. Not one time, not 2 times, 3 times speed, and still keep up. I'm trying to get 3.5. So look, it really, I mean, look, I love, from a civil rights point of view, I love The Making of Black Revolutionaries, about the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in the 60s. I always tell people to read that because I just think people don't understand that history. However, it's not just about protests and that kind of stuff anymore. It's also about entrepreneurship, creativity. And so I was reading a book called The Four, about, you know, Apple, Google, Amazon, and whichever other one, and how they're trying to take over the world. I was reading a book called The Upstarts about Airbnb, and Uber, and all how they were put together. Look, there are 4 corners of power in this country. Elite power. Now, there's soul power and grassroots power are different, but elite power: Washington, D.C. in politics, Silicon Valley in technology, Wall Street in finance, Hollywood and media ownership. You can look at a map of the country: D.C. politics, New York, Wall Street, finance, come across over to California, Silicon Valley, technology, and then go down to L.A., media ownership, not being the star, but owning the studio. If you understand those 4 corners of power, you understand America. You can make a lot of stuff happen. But if you want to understand politics, you got to understand both sides, left and right. And even if you mainly care about politics, you still have to understand the private sector, finance, technology, and media, or you can't even be successful in politics. So look, I just read a lot. I wish I could just have 1 book or 2. But I would say study those 4 corners of power, and you'll be pretty good.
Another question says, a student asks, in this troubling moment, what gives you hope?
Y'all, young people, you know, I mean, look, I'm twice as old as people on my staff. Sometimes, you know, I'm 52. I got some 26-year-olds on my staff, which are probably old to you, but they're babies to me. And you know, I love learning from them. I love, you know, look, we have all the solutions that we need. We have technology. You got more computing power in your hand right now than the US government had when it put a man on the moon. Okay, the entire US government had less computing power to put Neil Armstrong on the moon than you have in your hand right now. You got to stop using these things as toys and use them as tools to make a change. But look, we have all the solar technology. We have all the solutions are there. We just have not, you know, committed to putting them in place. But I think your generation will.
Well, with that, I have to say, Van Jones, thank you so much for your inspiring remarks and for helping us launch our Good Reason Purpose for Public Policy event.
Wait, don't cut me off. Don't cut me off. Can I just have one more closing comment?
Please, the floor is yours.
Okay, look, 3 things that the best advice I ever got, 3 pieces of advice. Number 1, you only are going to have about 100 to 120 people in your life close in. That's why almost every wedding is about 300 people, because both sides bring their closest people. It's about 100, 150 at the most. You really need to make sure that those 100 people are good for you. You cannot be successful when, you know, you're the number 1 person, the other 99 people in your life are pulling you down. You got to have people around you, and it should look weird. You should have mentors and advisors that look nothing like you. They're not from anywhere you've ever been, so that your 100 can lift you up as opposed to pulling you down. I'm telling you, this is now a lot of African Americans struggle with this because we're trying to bring the whole hood with us. Look, you can go back to the hood. I told you that. But let your 100 lift you up. Have a weird 100 to lift you up. Number one. Number two, when you make a choice, make sure it's a choice that gives you more choices. This sounds simple, but it's not. When I was graduating from college, I had a chance to either go work for the Associated Press as one of the youngest African Americans ever to work for AP, or to go to Yale for law school. Either one would have been great. I would have, probably wound up being the head of Associated Press at a certain point. But I made the choice to go to Yale Law School because it's easier to go with a law degree back to AP than to go from AP 3 or 4 years later to go to law school. Maybe I have kids. So those are two great choices, but I picked the one that gave me the most choices after the choice. Life will will shoot you down a more and more narrow path if you let it. Because when you're first born, a baby has a million choices. Oh, you might be the president of the United States. A minute before you die, you have no choices. So life is a process of choices being taken away. You want to make sure you're making choices that open up more choices. That's why you want addiction and that type of stuff makes you have fewer choices. You want to get all that stuff out of your life so you can continue to have more choices. Last thing is this. I had a great professor at Yale Law School named Harold Coe. He became the dean of the law school. When he was a young professor, he told us, he said, there'll become a point in your life 2 or 3 times in your career where it all matters. It's all on the line. You're in front of the Supreme Court. You're on national television. Something major is going to happen to you. And you're going to forget 99% of what you know. Happens to everybody. When that big moment comes, you will literally forget 99% of what you know. You're just going to be in shock. So your whole life is about making that 1% as big as possible. Learn everything that you can. Don't just veg out on Netflix all the time. Be watching the documentaries, get a master class, and just be learning, meeting more people, because you never know when that moment comes. And if your 1% is just a little bit bigger than the other person's 1%, you will succeed and they will fail. So please make sure you have the right people in your life. You got to fire some people and hire some people in your personal life in order to win. Please keep expanding your choices, make wise choices. And lastly, just learn. Because when that moment comes, if your 1% is bigger than the other person's, you're going to succeed and have an amazing life. I wish I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours. Thank you for the opportunity. Best of luck to you.